This is Math 2, 9.5 notes. That's Math 2, Unit 9, Lesson 5. I'm working off a handout today, so you can either print it from my website or just hand write the problems as we go. Okay, first thing I want to do is discuss the formula for volume of pyramids and cones. Okay, volume for pyramids and cones, it's the same thing. It's the area of the base times the height of the pyramid or cone divided by 3. Okay, so how does this change from the volume of a prism? The volume of the prism was just area of the base times the height of the prism. But for now, for a pyramid or cone, we take that same formula but divide it by 3. Okay, so just a quick reminder that B stands for area of the base. So you can see here it's a square base, here it's a square base, square base. Sometimes you'll have circular bases, which makes it a cone. Okay, so area of the base, and height is your, I'm going to put here perpendicular height. Now, it's never going to be called perpendicular height. It's just going to be called height. But the reason I point that out is because there is such a thing called slant height. You see this one here on the outside, on the edge, one of the faces of the pyramid? That is called the slant height, which is not the height that we use for the formula. Perpendicular height, that's this one right here, this is the one that we used for our formula. And it's just going to be called height. It's not going to be called perpendicular height, but it is always perpendicular to the base. Okay, so let's work this out. Volume equals area of the base times height divided by 3. Don't forget to divide by 3. Many times I'm going too fast and I forget, then I have to go back and fix. So remember that. All right, I'm going to start with the area of the base first. Lucky for us, our base is a square. It says find the volume of a square-based pyramid with the height of 6 inches. So my height right here is 6 inches. And a base edge of 8 inches. All right, not too bad. But since it's a square, it's an 8 by 8. Length and width are the same. So the area of the base, big B is the area of the base, is length times width. And since it's a square, it is 8 times 8. So the area of the base is 64 inches squared. All right, volume is that area of the base is 64 inches squared times the height, which is 6 inches. So you will need a calculator for these problems, so you'll want to plug it in now. 64 times 6, and almost forgot it again, don't forget your divide by 3. Go ahead and plug that in now. All right, and you should end up with 128. 128 inches cubed. Remember, volume is always cubed. So 64 times 6 divided by 3. 64, when you multiply that by 6, that's 384. And then divide by 3. All right, next one. A right square-based pyramid with height of 12 and a slant height of 13, find the volume. All right, they didn't give us the base edge at all. What do I do? And they gave me the slant height. I don't use the slant height in the formula, so what am I going to do with it? Here's what you're going to do. First off, recognize that this length here from the right angle to the edge is half of this length here. So if I could find this little leg here, I double it to find the base edge. And once I know the base edge, I can do like I did here, 8 times 8. So that's what I'm going to do first. So sometimes you do have to work with your slant height. 12, 13, and I'm just going to call that x. And we're going to do Pythagorean's theorem. 12 squared plus x squared equals 13 squared. So 144 plus x squared equals 169. and then we subtract 144 from both sides. X squared equals, plug that in your calculator, 25. And then we're going to square root both sides because square root's the inverse operation of squared and they undo each other. Now remember, in the past we'd always do this, plus or minus 5, but because we're now dealing with side lengths, length, distance is only positive. So it's just positive 5. So this little leg here is 5, which means the whole base edge is 10. The bottom base of your right triangle will always be half of your base edge. Since it's a square, it's a 10 by 10, so we're ready to find the area of the base. All right, big B for uppercase, the uppercase B is for area of the base, length times width, and since it is a square, it's 10 times 10, so it is 100 units squared. Volume equals area of the base times the height divided by 3. We just found the area of the base to be 100. Now, which height do I use, the 12 or the 13? We do not use the slant height, we use the perpendicular height. So 12 times 12 divide by 3. All right, so you have 1200 divide by 3. You end up with 400 units cubed, or cubic units. They didn't give us units, so we just put units cubed. All right, moving along, number 3, a right square base pyramid with base edge of 30 and a slant height of 17, find the volume. Okay, now a really quick side note, we know that big B is 30 times 30. That we can do without any extra work because it's a square base and the base edge is 30, it's 30 times 30. So that part we know without any extra work. We know that this is going to be 900. All right, but the volume is area of the base times the height divided by 3. And the height is this height here, not the 17. So I need to find the height. How do I do that? All right, I'm going to use the slant height again. I'm going to redraw that right triangle. I know this is 17. I know this is H. And I just said previously that this little base edge down here is always half of the total base edge here. So this little side leg is half of the base edge. The leg is half of the base edge. So this leg right here is 15. And I'm using that to help me find the H. So I am going to do H squared plus 15 squared equals 17 squared. Pythagorean's theorem. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So hopefully you have your calculator out. H squared plus 225 equals 289. And we're going to subtract 225 from both sides. Go ahead and plug that in now. You should end up with 64. So I'm going to put an arrow here. H squared equals 64. We are going to square root both sides. And remember, we should put plus or minus, but because it's a length of a side, we're only going to use positive values. So the height is 8. So right here, we just found the height, and now we're ready to plug it into the volume formula. Volume is area of the base. We found the area of the base to be 900 because it was 30 times 30 times the height. We just found the height to be 8 divided by 3. You plug all that in your calculator. You end up with 7,200 divided by 3, 2,400 units cubed, cubic units. All right, moving right along. Next one, now we're dealing with cones. Lucky for us, the cone formulas work the same way. It's area of the base times the height divided by 3. So let's read this one. A right cone with diameter 16 and a height of 5 root 2. Okay, this one's obviously not drawn to scale, but it's okay. We can still figure it out. All right, diameter is 16. And the height, it didn't draw the height, so I'm going to put it in there. And if it just says height, it's always referring to the perpendicular height. The height is 5 root 2. All right. Volume equals area of the base times the height divided by 3. Now, we have to change gears a little bit here. Previously, on the last 3, we did length times width for area of the base. 30 times 30, 10 times 10, 8 times 8. Because it was a square base. But now it's a circular base, so going back to our previous set of notes that we've done, I'll put it up really quick, review of the area formulas. The area of a circle is pi r squared. So pi r squared. Now be very careful. Kids will be like, oh, plug in 16. The diameter is 16, not the radius. If the diameter is 16, what is the radius? The radius would be 8. So, area of the base, 8 squared is 64 pi. Volume equals area of the base, 64 pi, times the height. The height is 5 root 2. And all of this over 3. Okay, so what you're going to do is do 64 times 5. That gives you 320. Root 2, because root 2 doesn't have any other radical to multiply, and the pi. The pi stays there as well. And then all over 3. And I'll divide 320 by 3 right now. Before I do, 320 came from 64 times 5, and then root 2 pi, and then all over 3. Now when you divide 320 by 3, you get a decimal. So rather than working with decimals, I would just do 320 over 3, root 2 pi, units cubed. They didn't give me any units, so cubic units. Now if you wanted to, you could write that as a decimal. It would be 106.67 root 2 pi units cubed, or cubic units. But just know in a multiple choice type question that this would be the same thing as writing it as in decimal form. So it's up to you and how you want to write it. All right, next one. A right cone with the volume, this time they gave us the volume of 455 pi and the height of 7, find the slant height. So if they give you volume and they ask you for a piece like the slant height, the height, the diameter, the radius, you're working backwards. This is a working backwards problem. All right, volume is area of the base times the height divided by 3. All right, what did they give me? They gave me volume is 455 pi. I don't know the area of the base, but they gave me the height is 7. I'll go ahead and put that 7 in the picture. And it said height, not slant height, so I know it's this one here. And then all over 3. So what I'm looking for right now is the uppercase B, because that's the only thing I don't know. And then I'm going to use the uppercase B, remember, which stands for area of the base. I'm going to use that to help me find the slant height. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is multiply both sides by 3. So plug in your calculator, 455 times 3. And I am going to make a change, and my apologies. I changed the problem on my documents, but I didn't change it here. So we're going to change the height and the volume. And I will make this change. Yeah, never mind. Okay, so go ahead and change it. I am going to change it to a volume of 128 pi and a height of 6. So please make those changes now. All right, so I'm going to make the changes here on my pencil markings. Instead of 455 pi, I changed that to, what was it, 128 pi. And the height is 6. All right, we're ready. 3 times 128 pi equals b times 6 divided by 3, and I multiplied by 3 to get rid of it. Okay, so the height is 6, volume is 128. I'm multiplying the 3 to get rid of it, and starting over. 128 times 3 is 384. Now we're back on track. Pi equals big B times 6. I'm going to divide both sides by what to get B by itself? By 6. So take the 34, divide by 6. You should end up with 64 pi. All right, 64 pi equals big B. How am I going to use the uppercase B to find the slant height? Well, what is the uppercase B again? The uppercase B is the area of the base. What is my base? It is a circle. 64 pi equals, what's the formula for area of a circle? Pi r squared. All right. The only thing I don't know here is the radius. So I'm going to divide both sides by pi. Gone and gone. 64 equals r squared. Square root both sides, inverse operations. Remembering, instead of doing plus or minus, we're just going to do positives because we're dealing with side lengths. So the radius is 8. Now, how is that going to help me? They didn't ask me for the radius, they asked me for the slant height. How can I use the radius being 8 to help me find the slant height? All right, I'm just going to redraw that right triangle. This is 6, this is 8, this here is the slant height, which is what I'm looking for. And I can now use Pythagorean's theorem to help me find it. Does that make sense? We did all of this to find the radius which was 8. And I'm going to use that and the height to make a right triangle so I can find the hypotenuse, which happens to be the slant height. So 6 squared plus 8 squared equals x squared, which is the slant height. 36 plus 64 equals x squared. Add those together. You get 100 equals x squared. Square root both sides. X equals positive 10 because we're dealing with the side length, and that is your slant height. That's what it is you're looking for. Slant height is 10 units. All right, that is it for this section of notes.